On March 25, 2017, 21-year-old Brooke Preston was stabbed to death by her roommate and childhood friend Randy Herman Jr. in their West Palm Beach, Florida home. Brooke was in the process of moving out to live with her boyfriend in New York, and she had spent her last night in Florida with Randy and some other friends. Randy, who had issues with alcohol, including 2 DUIs on his record, had drank 30 beers the night before, so Brooke had to stay with a different friend because of Randy's intoxication. When Brooke came over that morning to pack her last few items, Randy brutally stabbed her 25 times with a hunting knife. Following the murder, he called 911 and met officers at a nearby park, stating that he had no idea what had happened. He eventually confessed to the murder and said he must have stabbed Brooke while sleepwalking due to a severe hangover. Randy's sleepwalking history, supported by his mother's testimony, were used to support his defense. Prosecutors said Randy had unrequited feelings for Brooke, and incidents like his hiding naked in her closet were highlighted as evidence of that. They also argued that the brutality of the stabbing made sleepwalking an unlikely cause. In 2019, a jury rejected the sleepwalking explanation, and Randy was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. On October 25, 2004, 44-year-old Elizabeth Lochtefeld was found dead on the floor in her Nantucket, Massachusetts home. She had been stabbed 23 times. Her brother Tom had called the police and asked for a welfare check to be done because Beth hadn't picked up his son from school and wasn't answering his phone calls. The police asked Tom if he knew anybody who wanted to hurt his sister, and he gave them only one name: Thomas Tulin III, Beth's boyfriend. Beth had rejected Thomas's proposal 2 days earlier in a New York art museum. His alcoholism made him prone to violent outbursts, and he was sexually abusive, so Beth knew she needed to get away. Thomas was upset and followed her back to her hotel room, and when they went to sleep, he laid across her legs so she couldn't get away. She managed to escape in the middle of the night and return home. Thomas had flown to Nantucket on the morning of the murder and rented a car. He then drove to 2 different stores to purchase knives and went to Beth's place before fleeing the airport. He was arrested in Rhode Island a few hours later. After having his first conviction thrown out by the state Supreme Court, Thomas was convicted a second time and sentenced to life in prison with no parole. On May 3, 2017, 22-year-old Akia Eggleston withdrew $450 from her bank and was never seen again. She was 8 months pregnant at the time, and when she failed to show up for her baby shower on May 7th, her family went to her apartment to look for her. They found the apartment entirely empty except for her bed. They also noticed that all of her social media and contact with her family had stopped days prior, even with her 2-year-old daughter. The investigators learned Akia was planning on moving in with the father of her unborn child, 38-year-old Michael Robertson, and the money she withdrew was for a down payment for that move. The case went cold for several years, but using cell phone data, Google searches, and other forensic data, investigators finally had enough evidence to arrest Michael and charge him with 2 counts of murder. He had also been in contact with the mother of his other 2 children during that time. The prosecution alleged that Michael killed Akia inside her home and then put her body in a dumpster after the 2 argued about his ongoing relationship with the mother of his other children. On July 27, 2023, Michael Robertson was found guilty on all charges despite Akia's body never having been found. On November 14, 2014, 29-year-old Elisa Jackson entered the Honolulu, Hawaii home of 40-year-old Michael Walker and his 38-year-old wife Catherine using a key Michael had left for her outside. Once inside, Elisa repeatedly stabbed Catherine and waited 30 minutes to make sure she was dead. She later stated that as she was stabbing her, she asked Catherine for forgiveness and said that Catherine said she did forgive her. Elisa had met Michael online and they started having an affair. Michael told Elisa it was too expensive to divorce his wife and wanted the $400,000 life insurance payout he would get with her death. Elisa agreed to kill Catherine while Michael was at work so he would have an alibi. After the murder, Elisa flew to Indiana where she was arrested. When investigators had questioned Michael about Catherine's death, he tried to pin the whole thing on her. However, Elisa flipped on him for a reduced sentence and both of them were charged with the murder. Michael as the mastermind and Elisa as the actual killer. In 2020, they were both convicted of murder after pleading guilty. Elisa was sentenced to 30 years in prison while Michael was sentenced to 35 years. On the evening of July 18, 2010, former NBA player 34-year-old Lorenzen Wright left his house and was never seen alive again. According to his ex-wife Shara Wright Robinson, he was carrying cash and drugs at the time. 4 days later, his family filed a missing persons report. His body was found on July 28th in the woods off Callis Cutoff Road in Memphis, Tennessee. He had been shot to death. A 911 operator in Germantown, Tennessee had taken a call from Wright's phone on July 19th when he heard 11 gunshots ring out and the call ended. However, the dispatcher didn't report the call until 8 days later, which led to a delay in the investigation. The case went cold until 2017 when the murder weapon was found in a lake in Walnut, Mississippi. That same year, a deacon at a Collierville, Tennessee church named Billy Turner was arrested and charged with Lorenzen's murder. A month later, Shara was arrested in California and also charged with the murder. She was a member of Billy's church and the beneficiary of Lorenzen's $1 million life insurance policy. In 2019, Shara pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 years in prison for facilitating the murder. In 2022, Billy was sentenced to life for carrying out the murder.